Why Mount Etna has been erupting for 500,000 years and isn't done yet. They say the Earth is alive, but on the island of Sicily, it doesn't just breathe, it growls. And its heart, they say, is made of fire. Mount Etna. Towering over the eastern coast of the island, it has loomed there for as long as humans have looked up to the sky in wonder and fear. It is the most active volcano in all of Europe, and one of the most active on the entire planet. But what makes Etna so relentless? Why has it erupted more than 200 times in recorded history? Why does it seem to never sleep? To answer that, we need to start, not with lava, but with legends. Because long before we understood tectonics, ancient civilizations believed gods and monsters were imprisoned beneath this mountain. The Greeks said Hephaestus, the god of fire and blacksmithing, had his forge deep inside Mount Etna, hammering weapons for the gods. Others swore that the monstrous Typhon, a creature so fearsome it once challenged Zeus himself, was buried under Etna's rocky crust. His rage, they believed, was what caused the mountain to erupt. And if you've ever stood close when Etna roars, when it throws ash into the sky and breathes flame across the land, you might believe it too. But the truth, of course, is both less mythical and more terrifying. Mount Etna sits at a collision point between the African and Eurasian tectonic plates. These immense slabs of the Earth's crust are constantly grinding, shifting, and reshaping the planet. And where they clash, pressure builds. At Etna, that pressure is relentless. Deep beneath the surface, magma churns in vast underground chambers, looking for a way out. And when it finds one, through a fissure, a crack, or a weakened cone, it explodes. Unlike many volcanoes that erupt once every few hundred years, Etna does it constantly. Some years it erupts multiple times. Sometimes it erupts for months at a time. In 1669, it sent a wall of lava right into the heart of Catania, destroying entire villages and nearly wiping out the city. In 2021, it erupted over 50 times in a single year. And yet, people still live nearby. Why? Because Etna is not just a destroyer, it's a giver too. The land around Mount Etna is some of the most fertile in the Mediterranean. Its volcanic soil is rich in minerals, perfect for growing grapes, olives, and citrus. For thousands of years, Sicilians have made a silent deal with the mountain. We live under your shadow and you feed us. But it's a deal paid in risk. Every rumble of the earth could mean devastation. Every plume of smoke could signal the end of a home, or the birth of a new one. Etna doesn't just shape the land, it shapes the people. The Sicilians who live near it have grown up with stories of lava flows and midnight evacuations. Children are taught how to escape if the mountain erupts. Elders tell tales of ash that turn the sky black. And yet, they stay. Why? Because Mount Etna isn't just a volcano. It's part of their identity. A fire-breathing reminder that nature doesn't ask for permission. It demands respect. But what if I told you? Etna's eruptions are getting more frequent. What if the past was just a preview of what's coming? Because scientists are starting to warn that the worst might still lie ahead. There have been days when the sun never rose over Sicily, not because it was night, but because Mount Etna made the sky vanish. Let's go back to the year 122 BC. The Roman Republic ruled the Mediterranean. Catania was a thriving city on the eastern coast of Sicily. But one morning, without warning, the earth cracked open, and Etna screamed. It didn't just spill lava, it hurled ash and pumice stones so high they rained down for days. Crops were buried, roofs collapsed, the darkness swallowed the city. And Rome, watching from afar, did something remarkable. It exempted Catania from taxes for 10 years. That's how bad it was. Even an empire feared Etna's wrath. But that was just a warning shot. Fast forward to 1669, one of the most catastrophic eruptions in European history. The ground trembled for days. Locals prayed, ran, and pleaded with the heavens. But the mountain did not listen. Lava burst from a fissure over 10 kilometers long. It flowed like a glowing river, swallowing 15 towns on its path. And then it turned toward Catania. Desperate, the people tried everything. They built stone barriers. They dug trenches. There's even a story of men dressed as saints, marching toward the lava with relics, hoping to scare it back into the earth. But nature does not yield to superstition. The lava surged onward, consuming homes, churches, and fields, until it reached the city walls. And then it stopped, as if the mountain had made its point. But Catania was never the same again. Part of the city had vanished. Its economy was shattered. And yet, people rebuilt. They always do. Because life around Etna has always been a dance with fire. But if you think the past was terrifying, what if I told you that Etna is evolving? That each eruption isn't just a random explosion, but part of a deeper, more dangerous pattern. In recent decades, Etna's behavior has changed. Scientists are watching with unease as the mountain shifts its shape, literally. You see, Mount Etna isn't just erupting vertically anymore, it's sliding into the sea. Yes, Mount Etna is slowly moving eastward, centimeter by centimeter, toward the Ionian Sea. It sounds small, but in geology, that kind of movement is massive. It's not just the lava that's dangerous. It's the entire mountain that's shifting. One day, that slow slide could trigger something unthinkable, a collapse, a tsunami, or an eruption larger than any we've seen before. In 2002, an eruption opened up a gaping fracture across the mountain's flank. It looked like the earth was splitting in two. Lava jets burst 100 meters into the air. Ash clouds reached as far as Libya. Flights were canceled, schools shut down. And satellite images showed something even more alarming. The eastern flank of the volcano had begun to slide, faster than ever. Geologists know what that means. When volcanoes slide like that, they don't do it quietly. They can collapse, catastrophically. They can generate massive landslides. They can create tsunamis capable of devastating entire coastlines. And if Etna's eastern slope were to fail, the damage wouldn't be limited to Sicily. It could sweep across the Mediterranean. But despite the warning signs, life continues. Vineyards still flourish. Tourists still climb Etna's blackened slopes. Children still sleep with the distant glow of lava outside their windows. Because for the people of Sicily, fear and resilience live side by side. But that doesn't mean the world can afford to ignore what's happening. Etna isn't just a local threat. It's part of a global chain of volcanoes, the Ring of Fire, the Mediterranean belt, that shape the fate of continents. And when one moves, others take notice. So the question isn't if Mount Etna will erupt again. The question is, how bad will the next one be, and will we be ready? Mount Etna, it's one of the most monitored volcanoes on Earth. Italy's top geophysicists track its every twitch. Dozens of seismographs measure every tremor. Drones scan the cone every week. Satellites hover overhead, mapping its surface and sniffing out the slightest rise in temperature or gas. The mountain is rigged like a living patient in intensive care. Wires, data loggers, laser reflectors. If science could tame anything, this would be it. But Etna doesn't follow scripts. It doesn't read reports. It listens to no one, not even the experts. Take March 16th, 2017. A team of scientists and journalists from the BBC ascended Etna to document a small lava flow from one of its fissures. They were cautious, well-informed, and experienced. Everything seemed under control. Lava was flowing, yes, but calmly, almost politely, oozing downhill like syrup on a plate. They had masks, they had guides, they had thermal cameras. But they didn't have luck. Without warning, gas trapped beneath the newly cooled lava exploded. Not from the summit, but right where they were standing. A phreatic blast, a steam-driven eruption, ripped through the surface. Rocks the size of watermelons flew into the air. Ash clouded their vision. 10 people were injured, including scientists. Some ran, some fell, others dropped their cameras and equipment. They were caught in chaos they couldn't predict, despite standing among some of the smartest volcanic experts alive. Why? Because no instrument on Earth can tell you exactly when steam and magma will snap. Now rewind to 2001, a different kind of surprise. For years, Italy's National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology, INGV, had prepped for Etna's next big move. They had strategies in place, evacuation routes, emergency lava diversion plans. Everything was ready, until Etna broke the rules. It didn't erupt from the summit as expected. It cracked open lower on the southern flank, dangerously close to tourist stations and villages. Lava burst forth in the wrong direction, engulfing parts of the funicular and nearly reaching populated areas. Soldiers were flown in. Bulldozers scrambled to dig emergency trenches. Helicopters dropped giant concrete blocks to create artificial dams. People prayed that a boulder could stop a volcano, and the mountain, again, played with them for 24 long days. But it wasn't done. Just 1 year later, in 2002, Etna proved how much worse it could get. On October 27th, in the middle of the night, the volcano's entire eastern flank fractured. It was as if the mountain was tearing itself open. New vents exploded violently. Lava poured out with brutal speed. Entire forests were incinerated. Rivers of fire flowed toward the towns of Lingua Glossa and Zaffarana Etnea. Ash soared into the stratosphere and blanketed the sky. This eruption wasn't local. It was continental. Winds carried Etna's ash over 600 kilometers, reaching Libya. In Catania, cars were buried in black dust. Airports shut down. Solar panels stopped working. Planes had to reroute. Crops died from toxic residue. The sound of explosions was heard for days. The volcano had spoken. Not with a whisper, but a scream heard across nations. And yet through all this, one thing kept repeating. We thought we were ready. But Etna keeps proving something terrifying. You don't predict it. You survive it. The data says Etna's eruptions are more frequent. The activity window is shrinking. Where once there were centuries between major blasts, now there are decades, years, months. Etna doesn't sleep anymore. It naps with one eye open. But here's what most people don't know. Etna is not just erupting. It's moving. For over a decade, geologists have detected that the entire eastern side of Mount Etna is sliding into the Ionian Sea. At first, it was slow, a few millimeters a year. Then it accelerated. Now it's moving at over 14 millimeters annually. That may not sound like much, but in geological terms, it's enormous. The entire mountain is shifting, downward and outward. And that kind of movement isn't just unsettling, it's potentially apocalyptic. Because when volcanic flanks slide too far, they collapse. And when they collapse into water, they generate tsunamis. We've seen it before. In 1792, part of Mount Unzen in Japan collapsed into the sea. The resulting tsunami killed over 15,000 people. In 1888, a similar event occurred at Ritter Island, producing a 15-meter-high wall of water. Scientists fear that Etna, with its immense mass and constant instability, could trigger something far worse. Imagine it, a chunk of Etna breaking off and plunging into the sea. The splash would trigger waves that could strike Sicily, Calabria, Malta, and even North Africa or parts of Greece. Coastal towns would vanish. Ports would be destroyed. Thousands could die. In minutes. And no alarm system would be fast enough. That's the danger. And still, Etna glows at night like a sentinel. Locals sip wine on their balconies, watching lava dance on the horizon. Tourists hike its slopes. Children take school trips to the rim. The mountain isn't just a threat. It's a symbol, a presence, a god in some eyes. It gives fertility. It provides vineyards. It draws millions in tourism revenue. So they stay, because fear doesn't stop life. And life, on Etna's slopes, has always come with a countdown. But it's not just the locals who are at risk. It's us, all of us. Etna is part of a larger volcanic chain that stretches across the Mediterranean, a deadly arc where the African plate shoves itself under Europe. It's the same system that created Vesuvius, Stromboli, Santorini. And when one volcano in this system stirs, others often follow. That's what makes Etna's increased activity so alarming. It's not just that it's erupting more often, it's that it might be a signal. And what if Etna is a warning? What if the mountain isn't just venting, but preparing? We don't know. Because while we watch it, Etna watches us too. It has erupted through Roman rule, Byzantine crusades, Arab invasions, Spanish kings, and Allied bombings. And it's still here, evolving, breathing, testing the limits of our science and the arrogance of our planning. Scientists can measure tremors, but they can't see inside Etna's heart. Not yet. And that means that no matter how many drones, labs, or satellites we throw at it, Mount Etna remains a mystery we live beneath. And that should terrify all of us. Before the seismographs, before the satellites, before the world knew what a volcano even was, there were people living beneath Mount Etna, and many of them vanished. Long before Sicily was called Sicily, tribes settled around the mountain, drawn by the rich soil and fresh water. They had no idea they were building their homes next to one of Earth's most dangerous forces. They didn't have maps or lava diversion plans. They had only myths. And those myths, it turns out, held truth. In 396 BC, the Greek philosopher Empedocles supposedly tried to prove his theory about fire and transformation by walking into Etna. Some say he wanted to test the immortality of the soul. Others say he believed he'd rise again as a god. But all that was ever found was one of his bronze sandals. The mountain swallowed the rest. It's not just Empedocles it took. Over the centuries, entire villages and temples have disappeared under Etna's lava. Every time it erupts, it doesn't just destroy, it buries. And beneath the layers of cooled magma, archaeologists have found clues. Pieces of pottery, statues, columns scorched and shattered, a fragment of a temple wall with ancient Greek inscriptions melted by heat. There's a legend that the lost city of Inessa, once a thriving sisal settlement, now lies trapped somewhere beneath Etna's southern slope. Inessa was absorbed by the Greeks and then lost again. Burned, crushed, buried. No one has ever excavated it fully. No one knows if it can even be reached, because to dig beneath Etna's crust is to dig into fire itself. And this isn't mythology. In 1981, near the town of Randazzo, workers digging for water struck something strange. A stone floor, perfectly flat and polished, under 12 meters of lava. They uncovered part of a Roman road, once believed to be gone forever. It had been sealed in darkness for over 1,000 years, preserved by fire. Imagine what else is buried there. Streets, altars, maybe even entire forgotten cities, perfectly intact beneath layers of death. Etna is a time capsule. A fiery museum that keeps its artifacts locked behind magma and heat. But that's not all it hides. Volcanologists studying Etna's internal vents discovered something startling. Etna doesn't just erupt vertically, it can open up laterally, miles away from the summit. That means an ancient town could have been wiped out from an eruption that didn't even come from above, and the people living there wouldn't have seen it coming. In 252 AD, during one of Etna's deadliest eruptions, ash buried villages so completely that survivors couldn't even find the roads they used to flee. Everything was gray. Everything was gone. It's said that Saint Agatha, the patron saint of Catania, appeared in the sky to stop the lava. Her veil was brought out in a procession. Miraculously, the lava stopped. That's what the church says. But geologists say it was just the volcano's own rhythm, a pause in a cycle that has never really ended. But the most chilling discovery came from deep inside Etna's ash layers. Scientists found organic remnants, grape seeds, bones, wood fragments, all carbonized, flash-burned in place. These weren't fossils from prehistoric times. They were from farms and homes, real lives, real people, caught in the eruption and turned into ash before they could run. Etna doesn't just erase history, it freezes it. But as terrifying as that is, there's something even stranger. People have always come back. After each eruption, after each village fell, survivors rebuilt. They planted new fields, they laid new bricks, they built churches on top of lava plains. It's as if no matter how many warnings the mountain gave, humanity refused to leave. Why? Because the mountain gives too. Etna's ash enriches the soil like few other substances on Earth. It creates conditions that are almost magical for agriculture. Wine from Etna's vineyards is some of the finest in the world. Lemons, oranges, olives, they grow in abundance on its slopes. It's the mountain's paradox. It destroys, but it also feeds. And so, civilizations grew around it. The Greeks, the Romans, the Byzantines, the Arabs, the Normans. Every empire that touched Sicily touched Etna too. They all knew its fire. They all tasted its danger. And yet, they all saw it as a source of power, a god in the earth. But Etna remembers. And beneath its rock-hard silence lies a history of warnings. Cities that vanished, peoples erased, stories interrupted. We walk on ground that has erupted before and will erupt again. And with every tremor, with every new crack, it's as if the mountain is whispering, "I've taken your past. I could take your future." There are mountains, and then there's Mount Etna. Most mountains rise, they stand, they erode. But Etna lives. It breathes, it groans, it remembers. This is not just a pile of rock and ash. This is a force that has been shaping the earth and the people who live near it for 500,000 years. And it isn't done yet. Because Mount Etna doesn't just erupt. It returns, again and again. And each time it comes back, it rewrites the rules. It buries the old, and it dares the new to rise in its place. You see, volcanoes are not just explosions. They are storytellers. They leave messages behind, in the rings of cooled lava, in the ash that settles like black snow, in the fractures carved into the earth like open scars. They are records of time, of change, of pain and resilience. Etna has buried temples, cities, farms, dreams, and still, people return. They build homes on the cooled lava. They plant vineyards where lava once flowed. They live on the edge of destruction because they've learned something powerful, that life and danger often come from the same place. It's hard to understand unless you've stood near it, unless you've heard the ground tremble beneath your feet and realized you're not alone, unless you've seen lava glowing in the night like blood in the veins of the earth, unless you've looked up at Etna and felt it staring back. Because here's what most people don't realize. Etna is not just a volcano. It's a mirror of us. We too are unpredictable. We build, we destroy, we burn bridges, then build new ones. We chase danger, then cry when it hurts us. We forget what came before, then get shocked when it happens again. But Etna doesn't forget. Etna remembers everything, every eruption, every burial, every soul it took, every town that thought it was safe, and still it waits. Maybe that's the most terrifying part. Not that it explodes, but that it waits, watches, listens. And it always comes back. Scientists say it's unstable, that it's sliding, that one day part of it could fall into the sea and create a disaster that shakes half the Mediterranean. And maybe they're right. Maybe Etna will be the cause of something no one is prepared for. A collapse, a flood, a chain reaction. But even if it doesn't, Etna is already doing something bigger. It's reminding us what it means to live with risk, to plant roots in uncertain ground, to find beauty in the shadow of catastrophe, to build homes, families, futures in a place that could vanish tomorrow. That's not foolish. That's human. It's what we do. We survive. We adapt. We make meaning in chaos. And Etna, for all its destruction, has given us something no sensor or satellite ever could: a sense of scale, a sense of time, a reminder that we are temporary, but also resilient. Etna doesn't stop, but neither do we. And that's the story. It's not just about geology or magma or tectonics. It's about people, about endurance, about memory and rebirth. It's about a mountain that has erupted for 500,000 years, not because it's angry, but because it's alive. And the question now is not whether it will erupt again. It's who will be when it does. Will we listen? Will we prepare? Or will we, like so many before us, forget the fire that sleeps beneath our feet until it wakes again? Because one day Etna will roar louder than ever before. And when it does, the world will look up, not in confusion, but in awe. Because the mountain warned us. It always has. If you found this story gripping, if Etna's tale made you feel something deep and ancient, subscribe to Uncle Luke Tells, where history is alive, dangerous, and always one step from fire. We tell the stories the earth never forgot, and the world must remember.